Климатските промени и глобалниот самит што се одржува во Глазгов и на кој се очекува да се донесат клучни одлуки за еднината на целата планета се во фокусот на вториот дел од вечерашната топ тема. Со оглед дека самитот се одржува во Британија, на кој му претходија и неколку настани поврзани со него што се одржа во Милано, Британија и Италија се копредседавачи на самитот, вечерва во топ тема разговараме со британската амбасадорка Rachel Галовеј. Good evening,
Good
Ambassador. And и со амбасадорот на Италија, Андреа Сивестри. Good evening.
Добро вечер.
Добре дојдовте. Mrs. Галовеј, this is the second day of the World Leaders Summit. This is supposed to be one of the most ambitious international UN climate change conference ever. We've heard a lot of the leaders already, but what are the expectations and ambitions that you are hoping to get from this summit?
Well, thank you for having us here for this conversation. It's really great to see that COP26 is finally underway. It's a year late because of COVID, but that's actually given countries more time to prepare what's needed. You're absolutely right, it's an incredibly ambitious summit, but the reason it's so ambitious is because we're running out of time to deliver on the commitments that we all made in Paris. So what we want to see out of Glasgow is a number of things. First of all, agreements from countries that they set out really ambitious commitments to reduce their emissions, to have targets for 2030 and to have targets for 2050 to go down to net zero. We then need to see people put the action in place to actually deliver against these targets, and we've already seen in Glasgow leaders and countries signing up to really important agreements on deforestation, power, methane, transport, and I was really pleased to see in President Penderovski's speech his commitments as well in those areas. We also need the world to agree to cooperate, and that's on emission standards, carbon trading, to actually implement the rule book that should have been finalised in Paris. And then the sort of other areas we hope to see agreement are on how we're going to adapt to where we've already seen the impacts of climate change, as we saw with some of the tragic climate-related events this summer, whether it was floods or forest fires, and how we're going to finance those. And there we really need the wealthier countries to step forward and actually meet the targets committed to for 1 billion a year of climate financing.
Ambassador Sivestri, Italy is a co-host of this summit. There were also a couple events which happened in Milan before the summit, which are connected with it, and Italy was also presenting the G20 summit this weekend with a lot of attention on these issues. So tell me, Ambassador, what were the outcome of these events and why the youth is important in the fight against climate change?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. And I would like to say that in the way to Glasgow with our British friends, we organize several events all over the world in order to raise the awareness of governments, but also the people, about the importance of fighting against climate change. And we mainly focus on young people. Why? There are three reasons. First of all, because tomorrow wars is their war. Secondly, because at stake there is also the importance of changing behaviors, and they are very important in setting new standards. I mean, not to pollute, use more green energy, and so on. Thirdly, because from energy transition there will be also economic opportunity, green jobs, and I think they are the best place to recognize them. So in Milan, you just mentioned, we organized this event, the Youth for Climate Driving Ambition. It was very successful event. We had 400 youngsters from all over the world, too, from North Macedonia as well. They met, they discussed for 2 days, and on the third day they had the opportunity to meet with the minister attending the pre-COP event in Milan, preparing the ground for the COP26 in Glasgow. So they had the opportunity to convey their concerns as well to the political level. I think they were able to move from protest to proposal, and this was very important. And another important two basic messages, I think. Raise ambition, and the second one, don't separate the goal of fighting against climate change from the goal of fighting poverty. The transition has to be inclusive. Then you mentioned also G20. We've been president of the G20 for 1 year. You know, this group gathers the most important economies in the world, representing 80% of the global GDP, but representing also 75% of emissions. Among this group, there are also some of the big polluters. This is not the case of EU, but still there are. So it was not easy to reach a common language with them, but at the summit that took place in Rome last weekend, we managed to agree on the target of containing overheating by 1.5 degree, and it was the first time in the G20 documents, and also to reach carbon neutrality by mid-century. And again, this was for the first time. There was also the point of financing, which Ambassador Galoweј mentioned. Also on then was the agreement to provide for 100 billion every year by 2025 in order to help poorer countries to reach their commitments in climate change.
Yes, you mentioned that it's good that, as you said, the youth is not only protesting, but now they're involved. Although I just read that Greta Thunberg is there leading some protests, saying that the leaders are pretending right now, so they have to convince them that they will make really important decisions. But every country and every society must embrace their responsibility for protecting the planet. So, Ms. Ambassador, tell us how North Macedonia is showing strong commitment towards sustainable development, how United Kingdom is supporting the country, and why is it important?
Okay, well, I'll start by saying that I think North Macedonia really has shown a strong commitment to sustainable development. And in some of the areas we've already touched on as being really clear priorities for what we want to see out of COP26, North Macedonia has set out its commitments. It's set out to reduce emissions in its nationally determined contributions, to reduce them by 51% against 1990 levels. That's a very ambitious commitment, but they're also putting into place the plans on how they're going to deliver that. So we've seen the adoption of the first long-term climate strategy, which is an excellent starting point, looking both at the diversification of energy, but also at creating green jobs, as Ambassador Sivestri mentioned. The UK has been really pleased to support the development of the energy strategy, and is now supporting the first implementation plan for the strategy. And that's about how the country is going to move from highly polluting fuels such as lignite and diversify in responsible and renewable energy, hydro, solar, but we're seeing at the moment how important that is as we all face rising energy prices across Europe. So this is a climate emergency, but it's also an economic emergency.
And Ambassador Sivestri, in this regard, how the European Union is supporting North Macedonia?
Well, the European Union, as you know, is at the forefront in this fight, but of course to us it's important also to help other countries and mainly neighboring countries. So we will do this through our financial assistance. Nearly 29 billion euros we provided to Western Balkan countries to help them to implement the green agenda. There will be also some specific instruments such as the Just Transition Fund, and we will be by your side in this challenge.
And in the end, I have a question for both of you. What are your recommendations? How can Macedonia contribute to this sustainable future and fight against climate change?
Okay, well, I think first of all, it's heading in the right direction, so I would urge all the political parties to continue with the greening agenda. I think, yes, you need the national government to take action, but this is also really an opportunity for local self-government to be taking actions at the municipal level, to be delivering a greener, cleaner future for their citizens, and also for preparing for future shocks. We may see forest fires again next summer. We need to be prepared for that and make sure that we're keeping people safe and mitigating against it. But also, and picking up on something Ambassador Sivestri said about engaging with youth, one of the things that I've found really inspiring here are actually the really committed young people, NGOs, civil society, who are all working on the green agenda, and we've both had the pleasure of spending time with them in the last few years. Young climate ambassadors, those who went to Milan, those who with Go Green organised a mock COP event. Organisations who are going into schools and teaching about biodiversity and bees. We've been involved in a project where they're teaching young people about carbon and using bikes to power films in the park. I mean, yes, they're simple steps, but they're teaching people about the changes they can make in their own lives that will make a difference.
I cannot but agree with my colleague. Of course, there is the level of government and other level of governance, but at the end of the day also the individual behavior and social behavior are very important. Our motto for the G20 was people, planet and prosperity. I think we do have to reconcile all three dimensions, this joint commitment and this joint fight that we all have to do.
Thank you very much for this discussion. Тука е крајот на вечерашната топ тема, која невообичаено ќе завршиме со изведбата на Лудовико Еинауди, италијански пианист, кој во знак на протест направи концерт на Арктикот, каде што се топат глечерите.